Take two. First rule of this channel, we do not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. Funny thing, I'm actually rereading the book Fight Club right now. So right now, I'm going to track that Audric Estime is probably going to be league winner out of this running back class. That would be my prediction. What I'm going to be doing in this video, the 2024 running back landing spot video, it's less to do with the player and more to do with the situation, because the situation is going to tell us more than we can guess about the player right now going into the draft. And Audric Estime would probably be my guess as a guy that's going to go outside of like those premium rounds in the real draft, like probably like 4th or 5th round, maybe even 6th round pick. And then because he's good at football, even though he doesn't have that 40-yard dash, he could probably be the guy that earns the role of bell cow, because he's, coachable, will pass block, can catch the football, and then, gets into that 60, 70, 80% run. And if he goes to the right landing spot on a good offense and he's that rookie running back, Bob's your uncle at that point. So I have the 2022 running back rankings, or league scoring, fantasy scoring leaders, as I stumble all over the place. And there's only 2 real rookies to be discussing here. The first one is down here. Dameon Pierce went to the Texans, started slow, came on strong, got injured, went on IR. The problem is he didn't score any touchdowns because he was on a really bad Texans team. They ended up getting CJ Stroud the year after that because of how bad they were. They just couldn't generate any offense overall. And then the other guy to look at off of this is Kenneth Walker, the third. So you have your draft capital. He went to not a good situation behind Rashad Penny. Had to sit until Penny got hurt. Then he inherits the backfield. And in a lot of leagues, this is why you just hold on to these guys. He ends up being a league winner going into the playoffs. I think he kind of faltered in the playoffs a little bit. But the best fantasy strategy, if you're in a lot of leagues that probably aren't dynasty, is to either draft these guys and hold them the entire year. So they're just going to be clogging up the bottom of your bench, or wait until someone who did draft them and then throws them away because they're just not producing, and pick that guy up as soon as possible. So like getting Kenneth Walker a week before that injury was probably the best play. But again, the tea leaves are going to say that guy's going to get an opportunity. It's just we're not always going to be able to predict that opportunity going on. So moving on to last year's running backs, the rookie running backs that did do something. You have Devon Achane, draft capital on top of the. It was a bad backfield, but it's a good situation. Jahmyr Gibbs, draft capital, bad backfield. He gets better. He gets an injury. He scores. That got you done. Trying to see if there's anybody else. Bijan, draft capital, bad situation. Actually finishes basically as an RB2 at that point. Trying to see if there's anybody else. Don't know. There are probably no other fantasy relevant guys that I see right now. Moving on to last year's draft class, and we could see again, Bijan went first with the 6th overall pick to the Falcons. And again, I'm saying this in the off season before last year, is landing spot's the biggest deal. It doesn't matter how talented the guy is, if he's not going to be used correctly and he's not getting the opportunity, the bulk of opportunity from a fantasy perspective, it was bad. And this was written all over it coming into the season. Jahmyr Gibbs, and this is another thing, like we have the draft capital. He was going to be in a split backfield with David Montgomery on a good offense, and the cookie crumbles the right way, and then he ends up being a league winner. Was not expecting this. Otherwise I would have had him ranked up higher. But and then sometimes like the measurables, he says it looks like he's not a bell cow, but they ended up using him a bell cow because of the situation. Zach Charbonnet, again, you have your draft capital, didn't do anything really last year of any note. Murky backfield, not a good offense. So like you could kind of get the idea that we want clearer backfields if we can, or we have to hold on to the guys until the backfield shakes them out. That's why I say, like, it's not always about handcuffing your guys. It's about owning the backfield and then letting it occur over the course of the season, things that we can't control happening. Kendrick Miller may be a league winner this year. Last year, he just never really got on track. He was injured. Tajay Spears was another guy that had league winner written all over him between a Derrick Henry injury or a Derrick Henry trade. It just didn't happen. Now he's going to be a split backfield. Devon Achane, like we already know about him, especially on this channel. Like draft capital, good situation, a bad backfield, it shakes out. Tank Bigsby looks like he's going to be a huge bust with the Jaguars. Roschon Johnson looked like he may have become fantasy relevant last year with that 4th round pick, and then this year. Doesn't look like he's going to do anything. Israel Abanikanda didn't do anything with the Jets. Chase Brown, he may have a little bit of boom bust RB2 this year. He had that last year. Depends on how that backfield shakes out with the Bengals. Eric Gray going to the Giants. Didn't really get a lot of work. May get a little bit of more of an opportunity this year. I kind of like him as a deeper sleeper. Evan Hall, he did look like he was going to be kind of the change of pace guy for the Colts. He got injured. I still think he might be in the rotation this year behind Jonathan Taylor. Chris Rodriguez ate into the backfield a little bit at the end of the year. Deuce Vaughn, it depends on who the Cowboys, if the Cowboys go out and spend, or they're just going to let Deuce Vaughn be the 1B this year to Rico Dowdle. Zach Evans didn't do anything when he finally got the opportunity. Trey McBride wasn't anything. I don't even know who Lewis Nichols is. He may not even made the roster. Kenny McIntosh was a mustache hair away from being relevant this year late in the draft. So anyway, moving on, we already talked about this. I like some of these guys. I don't know how many of the running backs are going to be fantasy relevant. Again, red zone opportunities and receiving work. That means they got to go to a good offense and they got to get the right opportunities. These two things don't usually go together. Those red zone opportunities with the receiving work, they got to be able to pass block. So there's only going to be a limited amount of guys. Like maybe Jonathan Brooks is going to be a pass blocker out of this group. Blake Corum, Audric Estime, I think would be good. Will Shipley is another guy that could potentially get this done. Dylan Labe. Those are going to be the limited amount of guys that can catch the football and potentially take on the pass blocking role that they're going to need at the NFL level. So again, even though what's his face, Kieran Williams was a second-year guy, you could see that he didn't have the measurables. He was like a 4.6 guy coming out of Notre Dame 2 years ago. And because he can do that, the stuff that they want, the trustworthy things, he ends up getting the bell cow work. He finishes as basically RB2 on the season. So again, this may not be apples to apples in comparison, but close enough for what we're looking for from a rookie perspective if there's going to be a rookie running back league winner. And then from a dynasty perspective, this becomes a bigger deal overall because, again, if they hadn't fired Arthur Smith from the Falcons, you're looking at an RB2 with Bijan going into year 2. So we still got to be able to plan more than one season ahead to really know where these guys are going to go. So an Austin Estime right here, he goes to the right situation and he basically can control a backfield for 4 years. So right now with Kieran Williams, I have him as, I got to pull this up, running back 3 overall. If the Rams don't bring somebody in, you're looking at a guy that's going to be hovering as a top 5 running back for the next couple of years as long as Matt Stafford's there, or they have another good quarterback. So that's what we're looking at from a landing spot situation. All right, what do I got now? I already talked about the rookie running backs. A little bit more. This is the NFL Network guys. These are all over the place. Certain guys that I have thoughts on. Jonathan Brooks is probably going to be the closest that we have to a Bijan or a Jahmyr Gibbs all-around player. Jalen Wright is a physical freak. I just don't think he's going to be able to do the pass blocking stuff. He's not quite a running back. He's more of a guy that you just give the ball to. It's a product of the offense. Trey Benson and Marshawn Lloyd, they look like they're bell cows. I think there's too many flaws with them to really take over a backfield early. Like I said, I like Tyrone Tracy. It depends on how coachable he is. He's 24. So it's how fast he's a converted wide receiver. It's how fast he can really get trustworthy in the pass blocking role. That's going to really dictate his ability to take over a backfield late. So this is a guy if you draft this guy in redraft or even dynasty keeper leagues, you're waiting. This is, if he breaks out, it's going to probably be in the second half of the season. League winner. I sort of like Ray Davis potential. Will Shipley's the guy, if he goes the right opportunity, because of his receiving ability, he could be a league winner. He's undersized slightly, but the bad situation with Clemson overall. Blake Corum's got league winner written all over him. Isaac Garriendo and Braylon Allen are bigger guys. Isaac Garriendo reminds me of Derrick Henry a little bit. Braylon Allen, he just there was a scheme change, and I don't know how much I would trust either one of these guys necessarily being that pass blocker, pass receiver. That's what I got there. Austin Estime, that's what I definitely could see him being. James Robinson was a league winner a couple of years back. That's kind of what I I would imagine Austin Estime to be like not necessarily the most athletically gifted guy, but he's going to catch the football, he's going to block, he's going to have good vision, he's going to go get the 3 yards when it's there, and that's all you really need out of it. Uh, Dylan Labe, we talked about him before, receiving back all the way, and I think that's about all. Bucky Irvin's a little interesting. Uh, Vidal's a little interesting. They're deeper dart throw guys that I just don't know are going to necessarily transport or translate in this year of the NFL. So we're going to go over the landing spots real quick. I don't want to just go like one for one, talk about the backfield, but we have CMC, we have 2 backup running backs. Even if a guy goes there, he's probably not going to be relevant. With the Bears, I would expect that Khalil Herbert's going to get moved, but they have the DeAndre Swift and Roshan there. The Bengals signed Zach Moss, and they have Chase Brown, so I'm not expecting that to change. First team that we're going to really talk about is going to be the Buffalo Bills. I have them pulled up right here. So what we're looking at right now is James Cook potentially getting in that bell cow role. He doesn't necessarily have that prototypical size at 5'11", 190. I have him ranked, and I've already been taking a look at my rankings. I'm expecting these to change regardless of the draft. But James Cook is running back 9 right now, and that's if they don't bring a guy in. So last year with Ty Johnson, this is why I have this pulled up. Ty Johnson last year, as you can see later in the season, he was getting in that 20 to 29% role. So as long as the Bills don't go out and bring in a guy, I could definitely see that Ty Johnson is going to remain in this 20% role, 20, 30% role, which is going to keep James Cook there. If they bring another guy in, this is going to not only knock James Cook down, it's going to make that guy less than fantasy relevant. And I imagine the guy they're going to bring in is going to be a guy like Austin Estime, the guy that we've been expecting for like years and years and years to finally eat into the Josh Allen rushing touchdowns. Now, moving on to the Broncos, you have Javonte, you have Jaleel McLaughlin, you have Samaje Perine. It's just going to get murkier if they bring a guy in. They have a lot of holes. I doubt that. The Browns have a whole bunch of guys. If I pull this up, the Browns have a whole bunch of guys that they're going to have there with Nick Chubb potentially coming back late. Jerome Ford, Pierre Strong. They signed Deontay Foreman, another guy. I wouldn't be surprised if they go out and get another guy, but again, that guy's probably going to just make it like really murky. The Buccaneers, I have them pulled up. So right now I have Rachaad White ranked as running back 4 overall. I imagine they re-signed Chase Edmonds. Sean Tucker's still on the roster, even though I'm not expecting anything out of him whatsoever. What I would be expecting is the 70-80% snaps from Rachaad White if they bring in a rookie running back. And again, we're looking at a guy like Austin Estime to come in there. That's when it's going to not only hurt our Rachaad White shares, it's, we could start speculating on that guy eventually getting a role in the backfield with an injury. So now we have a cuff. That's what I'd be looking at more so with the Cardinals, or excuse me, the Buccaneers this year. So moving on to this one. The Cardinals, I do want to talk about them also. So we have James Conner. He's 29 coming into the season. They had Amari DiMercato that, we watched last year eat into the role a little bit, get a little bell cow with the James Conner injury. They also went out and they signed Michael Carter when he got cut from the Jets. I definitely think that they have the possibility to have like their 1A, their 1B, and their 1C in this backfield. If they go out and they get a guy, especially because like James Conner's 29, may not make the roster because of that age coming into the season, he could be 29. I could definitely see this backfield getting really murky really fast. So I could definitely see that they're going to spend on him, even if James Conner is going to come back. They have to have a plan for after the season. And I don't know if it's the undrafted free agent or the cast off that's going to end up taking the job. So I could definitely see that getting kind of ugly from a fantasy perspective. So now we're going to move on to the Chargers. I do have them pulled up here someplace. Gus Bus signed in the offseason. He's only getting $4 million. I do want to talk about Barkley's deal. Saquon Barkley, 3 years, $37 million. And then we have Josh Jacobs way down here, 4 years, $48 million deal. So, there's not a lot of capital being put into Gus Bus. They went out and they signed J.K. Dobbins. I don't think he's going to necessarily be healthy. As pointed out by one of the viewers, Josh Kelly's not there anymore. Isaiah Spiller didn't really do anything when he had the opportunity last year. Everything is set up for the Chargers to go out and potentially get a running back. And, it's just a matter of when they're going to pull the trigger on the trade. If I could go hunt them or pull the trigger on the running back, it's going to, I would be very surprised that it does. If it doesn't happen, probably if they're looking for Blake Corum, it's going to have to be in the 3rd round pick range. 4th round pick, you're looking at like an Austin Estime. Like that would be a good guy to bring in here. for them, or you're looking at like a Shipley or a Labe or something like that that will be used in the passing game to go along with like the downhill Gus Bus, what probably is left in the tank for J.K. Dobbins in that range. So if one of those guys goes there, it doesn't necessarily mean that they won't take over the backfield, but it's probably going to take a little bit of time. I don't necessarily see that the Chargers are going to go out and they're going to pull this trigger on like Jonathan Brooks, and Jonathan Brooks may be the closest that this year's draft has to a first round draft pick. I definitely don't know if we're going to even see a running back go off the board until I could guess maybe even the third round at this point. Like like I said, they're all flawed. The closest to a bell cow is Jonathan Brooks, but that ACL might push him down the board a little bit. And then with some of the the depth that the running back position has, like your Shipleys, your Corums, your Gurriendos, your Allens and whatnot, Estemes, like these other guys that look pretty, your Wrights, your Bensons, your Lloyds, like teams may just decide that they're not really interested in wasting a higher draft pick on a guy that may bust, and they might take a better football player later on in the draft to do what that guy does well outside of trying to make him a bell cow. All right. Moving on, the Chiefs. I have the Chiefs pulled up because I think there's a better chance that the Chiefs pull the trigger on a guy and screw up Isaiah Pacheco being a bell cow. They re-signed CEH, and that they had a camp hype on Deneric Prince. They also had LaMichael Pirine that they will give the football to. Keontae Ingram, didn't really impress well with the Cardinals last year, but the guy like bringing in like a replacement for Jerick McKinnon would be something that would be interesting, and that would probably move Isaiah Pacheco back into RB2 land. It wouldn't necessarily mean that rookie running back is going to become fantasy relevant. And again, to bring this stuff up as I try and hunt down the NFL, like a Will Shipley would be a guy that I would think would be interesting going to there. Probably not Dylan Labe. I just don't know if he would be the type of guy that like Andy Reid would want to bring in, but like a true receiving back. Another guy would be like Tyrone Tracy Jr., the converted wide receiver that could go in there and have the running back type of role that Rashee Rice did last year, where it takes him like half the season to develop, and he would be looking at maybe like a fourth round pick to go there. I think that Tyrone Tracy might end up going in the third round above some of these other guys because again, the coachability, moving positions late and then looking as good as he did probably has more value than guys that are one trick ponies that really haven't gotten better at their craft over the few years. That's the main reason why running backs don't get paid, is because like, why would you pay a guy $16 million a year when he's only going to do like one part of the four things that you need to do? Like, okay, that doesn't make any sense to me. All right, moving on. The Colts, they have JT. We already talked about Hull. I don't necessarily think there's going to be anything done there that's going to be interesting. The Redskins, they've signed Austin Eckler. They're going to have B-Rob. They're going to have Chris Rodriguez. It's just going to make the backfield more murky. The Cowboys, they re-signed Rico Dowdle to a one-year deal. They're going to have their Deuce Vaughn. I also think that they do like, was it one of these guys? Malik Davis. So I could definitely see that maybe they don't go out and get a guy. I didn't even see that Snoop Connor's down there. So I could definitely see that Snoop Connor was with the Jags last year. I could definitely see that they don't really pull the trigger on a guy early. They signed Royce Freeman. Also, my mic's in the way if you're wondering why I'm having a hard time. So with all of this going on, like I could definitely see that the Cowboys don't go out and get a guy, but them being the Cowboys, I could also see that, yeah, they could draft Jonathan Brooks at the end of the first round. And the Cowboys are going to be really interesting because right now I have Rico Dowdle as my running back 19. If he survives the draft, I would probably push him up a tier at least. And if he doesn't survive the draft, he's not going to be fantasy relevant overall. And then the rookie running back that comes in here, even with Rico Dowdle there, probably is going to be overvalued because they already have the ability to basically go into a season without having to bring a running back in. All right. That's not what I want. The Dolphins, I mean, it's a good offense. It's just there's so many running backs there. Mostert, A-Chain, Jeff Wilson, Solomon Ahmed, Chris Brooks. Like, that's going to be a really hard road. The Eagles, the bigger issue with the Eagles after the Saquon Barkley signing 3 years, $35 million or $37 million. So again, they're paying him like a lot of money. And I did hear an argument. I think it was again the underdog guys we're talking about they made a really good argument that I hadn't thought about. They're paying Saquon Barkley. This is not a DeAndre Swift situation. They are paying. They're finally saying Miles Sanders, DeAndre Swift, we're not the upgrades we need for this offense. We're going to go pay Saquon Barkley to be that bell cow because we think he's special, and they're just going to give him the boat. So, like, that's something that I'm going to have to think about, especially after the draft, where I imagine that not all the guys that are going to be bell cows are going to survive their role. And that means I'm probably going to end up moving Barkley up my board. But to look at the Eagles right now, Kenneth Gainwell's not going to go away. Tyrion Davis Price, has something, like there was some draft capital spent on him in the past, even though he's a cast off at this point. There's our Lewis Nichols. Anyway, I could definitely see if the Eagles spend on a guy, they will do running back by committee, even though the contract says that they're not going to do it this year. All right. So the Falcons, I mean, they're going to have good old Bijan and Tyler Algier. Bringing another guy is probably going to hurt Algier more than it's going to hurt Bijan at this point. Expecting a huge season from Bijan is probably not out of or it's probably something I'd be betting on. The only problem I really have with Bijan is that goal line role that may go to Algier over him. Like some of the higher value touches may not actually all go to Bijan. Maybe a little cap from the touchdown perspective. Overall, a lot of weapons in this offense. Bringing in a guy probably isn't going to change anything. And I don't expect the Falcons to go out and spend on anybody with Algier. There, Algier is kind of replaceable. He is another guy. I think Austin Estime. So Algier, now that I actually am thinking a little bit, if you see with Algier, he was a 6th round pick with the Falcons 2 years ago before they brought in Bijan. And so he's a 6th round pick, just waited it out, and then he finishes the season 210 carries, 1,000 yards rushing, 3 rushing touchdowns, again on a bad team. And then he's also a little bit, has a little bit of receiving ability. He's also a really good football player, pass blocker. 16 receptions, 139 yards, and a touchdown. Most of this was done later in the season. So again, the draft capital on these guys, it has less relevance when we're looking at the actual road to win a league. And that's why I say, like, these guys that are going to go later in the draft that I can go target are more valuable to me than going out and telling myself that I'm gonna go draft that high value guy that went in like the first round of the draft that everybody's going to be competing for, when his road to win a league may be Bijan last year. It's going to be really tough. All right. Giants, this is another one that has league winner potentially written all over it. Don't particularly like the offense right now, but Devin Singletary right now is looking like the bell cow. Maybe Eric Gray they're going to give a little bit more run to next year overall, and then Deion Jackson is there. He's from the Colts. But overall, like they can go into the season without having to bring a guy in. Devin Singletary, he's one of those trustworthy guys. Even if they bring a rookie in, it's going to be a little bit of a road for that guy to pry the job away from Devin Singletary. So, like, that wouldn't surprise me at all. They probably are going to go quarterback, wide receiver before they go running back. Also, offensive line, can't forget defense. They probably won't have to be spending on a guy, and I imagine that they're probably going to give Eric Gray that run. The Devin Singletary, relatively cheap to get out from underneath. I don't even have his contract pulled up, but yeah, like I wouldn't be surprised at this point that Devin Singletary survives the draft just because they have other things that they need to go out and do besides that running back position. Jaguars, you got ETN, you got Bigsby, you got Dearness Johnson. It's just going to make the backfield murkier. The Jets are going to have Brees. Right now, maybe a Banaconda. Even if they bring a guy into the Jets, like, I'm not expecting anything more than the dirty work back, that 20 to 30% that really isn't fantasy relevant going away from Brees. The Lions, I mean, they're going to have Montgomery, they're going to have Gibbs. Like, it's just going to make the backfield murkier if they bring in a guy. The Packers, this is going to be a little interesting. So you have our Josh Jacobs signing, as I have him all the way over here, 4 years, $48 million. So they're expecting him to do the job, and they have a potential out after this 2024 season, if you're wondering. So if they don't like what they get out of Josh Jacobs, they're just going to throw him away. So that is a little bit more interesting from the Packers perspective. They went out and they re-signed A.J. Dillon right now. That would probably be the backup, that 20 to 30% for a Josh Jacobs, but based off the contract and all the situations, like they're gonna give Josh Jacobs the money or the boat this year. Like that's just what the contract says. I would not be surprised if they bring in somebody else, and then that's going to be the cuff for Josh Jacobs. If he can't, if he's not efficient or he gets injured. So that's what I'd be looking at overall. If there's a guy going to the Packers, they don't need anything on offense, maybe offensive line. Probably going to be putting their money into defense at this point. They are geared up to win right now. So that wouldn't be surprised. It's not going to be surprising to me that they don't worry about the running back position because they have their starter and they have their backup, and they're going to go a different direction. All right, Panthers. So right now I have Chuba Hubbard ranked as my running back 18 overall. I am expecting him to survive the draft for the Panthers. What I'm a little bit more worried about is that $6 million contract that Miles Sanders has this year. So I don't necessarily think he's going to go away. But bringing in a running back long term with Chuba Hubbard is probably not going to be, or it's going to be something that the Panthers are going to do. That's going to make me more worried than Miles Sanders cutting into Chuba Hubbard because they're going to have to go out and spend. And again, this is going to get in the range of just an Austin Estime, a Will Shipley type of guy coming into the Panthers. And then I got to own the backfield at that point. And I would not be surprised that Miles Sanders stays on the team because they owe him money this year. More so than he's going to get cut or he's going to get traded. I just don't. This is probably your 1A, your 1B. Chuba's going to get that like 60, 70% snaps. Miles Sanders is going to get like that, like 20% snaps. If they do pull the trigger on a running back, it's probably going to take most of the season for that guy to really become fantasy relevant. Patriots. So you got Ramondre, you got the signing of Antonio Gibson. Probably not going to matter. Offense isn't good. Raiders. Right now, this is something that we're tracking right now. I have Zamir White as my running back 10 on the year. They went and re-signed Amir Abdullah. Remember, special teams, pass block. You're going to be in the league for a long time. They signed Alexander Madison to come in and probably be the dirty work back for your Zamir White. You'll come in every once in a while. They're probably going to give the boat to Zamir White. So what I'm thinking is if someone comes into the Raiders, they really don't believe in Zamir White, and that guy's going to eat into the workload. Otherwise, I'm expecting Zamir White to be a league winner overall. So I don't think that the Raiders are going to spend on the running back position, especially because them going out and signing Gardner Minshew makes me think that they're going to go for the playoffs this year. They're not going to try and tank or do anything like that. They spent like $15 million to get Gardner Minshew to come in and probably take the job away from Aiden O'Connell. So I'm not expecting them to screw around and bring in some rookie running back to eat into a guy that they already gave bell cow work to at the end of the season. Let's see. Rams, a little concerned that the Rams are going to go out and bring in somebody else because, you to have a guy like Kieran Williams that is as good as he seems to be at football, and you're going to give him like, 80, 90% snaps, which we love from a fantasy perspective. From a real life football perspective, that may not be sustainable. Ronnie Rivers is kind of a clone to Kieran Williams, like from a size perspective, even though like he's probably not as good at football. Probably wouldn't be surprising that they just allow Rivers to be, the guy that comes in for that, 20% of snaps. They're still going to have Zach Evans on the roster, even though they gave him a run. They didn't like him. Wouldn't be surprised if they bring somebody in, but again, if they do, it's going to be, later in the draft. And I don't think it's necessarily going to affect Kieran Williams' ability to be that bell cow. Overall, it may be a guy that might eat into his workload as the season goes on, but to start the season, I don't necessarily think that they're going to do that. They also have to start planning for the eventuality of Cooper Kupp leaving because of age and Matt Stafford retiring because, again, age. Baltimore, Derrick Henry comes in. He's over the age apex. He's 30. That's kind of not what his thing is. He's I'm going to say something a little, a little spicy. Derrick Henry is a speed back that happens to be like 240 pounds. Yeah. So anyway, he doesn't necessarily have to have some of that other stuff that we want, even though his metrics are going down. The Ravens are going to have Keaton Mitchell coming back probably later in the season. I don't know what the severity of the injury was, if it was just cartilage damage or if it was just ligament damage. If it wasn't cartilage damage, I can tell you it doesn't really matter one way or another. Knee injuries are bad. So I could definitely see that the Ravens are going to have to bring a guy in, but the guy that they bring in, and I'm going to talk about like why I brought up guys like Isaac Guriendo and Braylon Allen, eventually being able to uh, be a one-to-one replacement for your Derrick Henrys down the line. Not asking them to really be the sleek inside runner, more of the guy that just goes, I'm going to eat your angles up because I'm fast. Like Isaac Guriendo, I think is like a 4.43 guy. He's ridiculous. At that size, speed. 4.33 at 220, probably 230 pounds. Like, yeah. So like you could bring a guy like him in and go, oh, Derrick Henry's 30, he's running out of gas, he got injured. We're just going to do the same thing with a guy and run outside zone all day long. So I could definitely see that occurring for the Ravens. He wouldn't necessarily be fantasy relevant this year, but down the line, like that I could definitely see that they could spend that draft capital. It's probably going to be like a third or fourth, fifth round pick to go out and get a guy like that. The Saints expecting that Alvin Kamara gets moved. They're still going to have Jamal Williams. Kenry Miller's got league winner written all over him right now. Another back's just going to make it murkier. Seahawks, they're going to have Charbonnet. They're going to have Kenneth Walker. They're going to have Kenny McIntosh. Again, it's just going to make it murkier. The Steelers, the one thing is Najee is at the end of his contract. I don't think they picked up his deal. Jalen Warren may be better a football player overall. Maybe they bring in a guy knowing that Najee is going to walk. Maybe I could definitely see that happening. Cordell Patterson did go to the Steelers, so maybe they don't have to go spend on a guy. Like it would probably be more of a developmental pick, not as interesting from a redraft perspective. Maybe from an overall dynasty perspective is going to have a little bit more value. The guy going to the Steelers, the Texans, they went out, they got Joe Mixon. They also have Dameon Pierce. I know that like he didn't really produce last year, was disappointing, but again, that's just a 1B to go along with Mixon. They did sign Dare again, and I'm not going to say his last name because I don't know how. He could be that receiving back. They're probably just set up, put their money into the defense. They the defense, the offensive line. That's probably the direction they're going to go in. They're on CJ Stroud's first contract. They went out and got Joe Mixon. It doesn't look like they're going to go spend on a running back. The Titans, they're going to have Tajay Spears and they're going to have Tony Pollard. This is going to make the backfield more murky. Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard probably have league winner written on them if you can get both the backfield. But if they bring in a third back, like that's just not a strategy that I'd be comfortable with. And then to finish this off with the Vikings, they went out and they got Aaron Jones on that 1 year, $7 million deal. They had Ty Chandler. He looks like he's bad at football, even though he's a good athlete. Like I can imagine these guys will go together this year. So I don't necessarily think that the Vikings will go out and spend on a high draft pick other than looking at the future beyond Aaron Jones. So anyway, that's about all I got. I'm going to come back, do quarterbacks and tight ends tomorrow. There's pretty much only going to be one tight end to talk about. A handful of quarterbacks overall. Guys that I would be interested in at their landing spots would be Tyrone Tracy Jr., Will Shipley, Bray Corum, maybe Guriendo and Allen because they may go deeper in the draft. Estime, I think, is going to be the league winner out of this group, and potentially even where's Labe at? Somewhere down here. He may be the receiving back that if he can get a little bit of run as just a 3 down back, there he is right there. He's going to go like 5th or 6th round, probably the draft. He's got the possibility to win a league. But at the best landing spots right now, we're looking at the Chargers, the Cowboys. Chargers only have Gus Bus, J.K. Dobbins. Cowboys have Rico Dowdle, Deuce Vaughn. So there's some work to go on there. The Giants may have Devin Singletary and Eric Gray to potentially eat into the backfield. See, the Rams and the Bills were expecting, excuse me, not the Rams. The Raiders and the Buffalo Bills, I'm expecting them to bring a guy in. I'm not totally sure that the Buccaneers are going to do that. Cardinals could go either way. Chiefs, maybe they bring in a guy. Eagles, I'm more doubtful that they're going to bring in a guy after the contract. Thinking about the contract a little bit more overall. And yeah, that's about it. See you guys tomorrow, probably.